All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakak Wadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And today, I'm just going to be doing a quick lesson on, this video that just came out recently where you have, this so-called black woman, mistreating her child, and it's written in the scriptures that, our women, would do these type of things to their children. Now, even though, way worse things have happened, and do happen to, the children of our nation, this is just one of many examples of, the curses that we suffer as a people. And this is how again, that we are the biblical Israelites, man, based on the curses written in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, that we suffer from, because no other nation deals with this besides us, So I'm just going to bring out a couple scriptures. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying and straight to the point. And you can clearly see, that woman was shaking her child, smacking her, telling her to shut up, shut the F up. That's not how you comfort a child, man. And I personally don't have children myself, but even then, man, have a niece, have a nephew, you know what I'm saying? That's not how you get a child to stop crying. Obviously, if a baby's crying, it's either because, they're hungry, they want their diaper changed, or, they want to be held or something, Screaming at your child to shut up isn't going to get them to stop crying, man. It's not. But it just goes to show you, man, how cruel, the women, in particular, the so-called black women, can be. So I'm just getting straight to it, man. Let's get the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 56. It says, "The tender and delicate woman among you, which will not adventure to set the sole of her foot upon the ground for delicateness and tenderness, her eye shall be evil toward the husband of her bosom, and toward her son, and toward her daughter, and toward her young one that cometh out from between her feet, and toward her children which she shall bear, for she shall eat them for one of all things secretly in the siege and straitness, wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee and thy gates." And right, the main point is what? She's going to have an evil eye, toward her son and toward her daughter, because, the person obviously recording, it sounded like, a young boy, but then again, I could be wrong, but either way, as a child, recording, that incident, and then the young baby girl, it does, it kind of does mess with you, knowing that, she is mistreating her child like that. But at the same time, we also have to take into consideration that, we don't know what that child did in her past life, not only to be born, from that particular woman, to have her as a mother, but to also receive that particular, mistreatment. We don't know, because at the same time, when these children, they get judged, man, they get, they get taken out in various ways. We know that, again, they're being paid back for something that they did from a past life. So again, just taking that into consideration as well. We don't know what the young child did, to deserve, what she is going through, but the main point is that woman, what she's doing or has done to that child is cruel, man. She's just a baby, again, comfort your child. But a lot of our women, they don't know how to be mothers, man. We already know they don't know how to be wives, man. Now, obviously, that doesn't apply to all of the nation, all of the women of the nation of Israel. But in particular, man, the so-called black woman, she has a very bad reputation for being, a deadbeat, because, again, the black man already has, a bad rep, or gets a bad reputation for being, a deadbeat, for being lazy, these different things. But what, man? Look at what you do, This is just, it's crazy. you know. But that woman, she has an evil eye toward her child, man, or toward her children. And who knows, because again, you clearly see there's no man in sight. Because if that was me and I saw, my woman, treat my child like that, then we would have a very serious problem. Because why are you doing that, man? There's no reason you should be violently shaking that child like that. You can break her neck. But she doesn't take that into consideration, man. She's cruel. So let me get that in the book of Lamentations, chapter 4 and verse 3. It says, even the sea monsters draw out the breasts. They give suck to their young ones. The daughter of my people is become cruel, like the ostriches in the wilderness. And right, this scripture alone, man, Lamentations 4 and 3 is a prime example of what we just seen. This woman, she's cruel to her children, man, and it's not just the black woman. It's even you Northern Kingdom women, you Latino women, a lot of you weren't right either, but still, man, this was documented. This literally happened, if not earlier, I think yesterday, man, but still, like, this is very concerning. And this is how again, that we are the biblical Israelites, man. Because, again, these different nations, they don't go through things like this. Now, I'm not saying that, other nations of people don't abuse their children, because they do, They abuse their children. They do these various things. But what, man? This is talking about what particular people, the Israelites, man. This isn't talking about any other nation. This applies to us, and in particular, the Israelite woman. And out of the Israelite women, especially the so-called black woman, the Judite woman, that woman is cruel to her child, man. And she doesn't understand that, she's going to be judged for that. Again, taking into consideration, we don't know what that child did in a past life to deserve that, But at the same time, that woman, Deuteronomy 28:56, man, that scripture alone applies to her. Lamentation 4 and 3 alone applies to her in this situation, man. It's heartbreaking to see, but at the same time, we have to remember these things, man, because the majority of our people that are in this world are wicked, man. We can't feel bad for them, because that woman, she's a 2/3. If that, that young baby girl, if she's a 2/3, then, hey, it's a messed up thing to see. But if she isn't right, then we can't feel bad for her, But then again, if she is a child that is slated to be saved, in these last days, then the Lord is going to deliver her out of that situation, somehow, some way. But that woman isn't right, man. She's cruel, just like the ostrich, so let's grab that in the book of Job, chapter 39. Yeah, and 13. It says, gavest thou the goodly wings unto the peacocks, or wings and feathers unto the ostrich, which leaveth her eggs in the earth, and warmeth them in the dust, and forgetteth that the foot may crush them, or that the wild beast may break them. She is hardened against her young ones, as though they were not hers. Her labor is in vain without fear, because Yahweh hath deprived her of wisdom, neither hath he imparted neither hath he imparted to her understanding. And right, the women of our nation are being the women of our nation, again, in particular, the so-called black woman, is being compared to an ostrich. Why? Because, an ostrich, a literal ostrich, again, will bury her eggs, like it says in the sand, she'll bury them, forget where she buried them, and end up stepping on them, or like it says, another beast may be walking by where she buried them and step on them, It's like it says, she's hardened against her young ones, meaning, she doesn't really care about them, And that applies, again, just to that woman alone in that situation. She's hardened against her young ones. She has an evil eye toward her children, and in particular toward her daughter just because she was crying, man. That's what babies do. They cry, man, you know. And just from looking, that child had to be, at least a year old, you know. It's just, again, it is heartbreaking, but we still have to take these things into consideration. But you women, man, you wicked Israelite women out there, you are going to be judged for your evil deeds, man. Because just like it says in Deuteronomy 28 and 57, right at the latter part of the verse, that it says in the straight, that she's going to eat her children secretly, which that is prophesying about 70 AD, when our people were told, to flee Jerusalem when they seen the cities being compassed about by the Romans, and what those that took heed, fled from Jerusalem. But those that stayed end up dying, man, because before the Romans came in and start, slaughtering them, they starved them out. They ran out of food. So if they didn't die of starvation, then what? They end up committing cannibalism, And that very same thing is going to happen in these last days, man. People are going to do that all over again. The men and women of our nation are going to do that. They're going to eat their children, man. They're going to eat each other, But this just goes to show you that, man, we are indeed the biblical Israelites. No matter what anybody has to say, we're the people. It's crazy, man. It's really crazy, but straight madness. Let me grab this right quick. The book of Exodus, chapter 20, and verse 5. It says, "Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord Yahweh thy power, am a jealous power, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me." And right, again, because I'm looking at it, again, from both standpoints, again, that woman, she is wrong. She's dead wrong about how she's treating that child, But again, we still have to take into consideration that what did that child do in her past life to be mistreated in that fashion, because again, just like it says, the Lord visits the iniquity of us, in the third or fourth generation. Let's just say, in the past life, you may not have been judged, at that particular time. The Lord will bring you back, in the third or fourth generation, as it says, just to get you and mess you up, man. Nobody escapes judgment. Nobody. And this woman, she is going to be judged for what she has done or what she is doing to her children. And in particular, that little girl, man. But, hey, it's just, man, we're the people, man. We are the people. So, ended with this. It's the book of Zechariah, chapter 13 and verse 8. It says, "And it shall come to pass that in all the land, saith the Lord, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, but the third shall be left therein." And right, 2 parts, meaning 2/3 of the nation of Israel are going to be cut off and be destroyed on this side, But the third being, the elect, the 144,000, the 1/3 men, women, and children, they're going to be delivered from the said destruction that is going to take place here in America, aka Babylon the Great, because again, that woman, the Lord is going to get her for what she's doing. She's not going to escape, and again, like I said, if that child, is being judged, excuse me, Slakia, for something that she did in the past life, hey, that's, she has to deal with that. And if she is slated to be saved, then again, the Lord is going to deliver her, So, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem. Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till next time I say, Shalom.